Good evening, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Political Economy Podcast. The four hosts for tonight, we have one half of them here. We have SBTV underscore in the top right hand corner, and we'll be joined by his brother sometime shortly. We have Canadian Populist Left in the top left, and then we have me, Touring News. If you just want to give us a quick little rundown as to what's going on with your channels this week, and then we'll go right into it.
Sure, I'll give it a go first. This week on I'm Canadian Poppies Left, obviously. On my channel yesterday, we talked about we do like 3 books a week. Yesterday we did "And Forgive Them Their Debts" by Michael Hudson. Covered that a little bit, and then after that we're gonna do also doing this week. Hang on, "In the Shadows of the American Century" by Alfred McCoy, kind of talking geopolitics and some of the history of that. And the other one sec. There it is, "Bullshit Jobs" by David Graeber. I just forgot the book, so I had to lift the cover there. So yeah, "Bullshit Jobs" by David Graeber, talking a little bit about kind of like certain redundancy occupations in the economy a little bit, and kind of he did how he wrote the book. Just quickly, interesting book. He wrote a provocative article talking about how there's like asking people to send him emails if they have bullshit jobs, like jobs that they think that if I didn't show up to go to work to do that job, no one would really care. Like the world would keep turning. And a decent amount of people emailed him like all these stories, so he kind of put together a theory of all these stories people were telling him. So it's a little vague, but there's something interesting in it. So
Very cool.
Well, I'm one half of SBTV underscore, yeah, we are covering probably a lot of different things. I don't really do too much planning. Like CPL's way more planned than I am on what content he wants to do. We'll probably talk a little bit about just sort of current conditions in the economy, and then inevitably get sidetracked into one of my dozens of tangents that I'll inevitably be sidetracked to, no matter what I talk about. So I do have a couple articles, one lined up on ancient trepanning, if people know what that is. But not even just trepanning. Drilling holes in your head. Basically, for 7,000 years, human beings have been experimenting with that for treating certain medical conditions. And another article I have is about monopoly power in the economy. The Federal Reserve just came out with some reports about the power of monopoly in the United States and what implications that has. So, well, those will be some of the many things that we go over on the stream tonight. And if you want to come around, we'll probably be streaming around 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, glad to be here.
And hello, I am one of the other hosts, Touring News. I think this week I kind of took a page or a book off of Canadian Populist Left Shelf, and I tried to read through a big part of the deficit myth with the community. So we read through about like 150 pages of the book. I kind of want to get that finished sometime later on in the week. And then today I took a turn down. Are there enough dollars out there in order to satisfy like all of the international trades that kind of take place, and are there enough dollars to pay for oil contracts and so forth? And I'm going to have, the big brain people here tonight to be able to help me figure some of these things out. I think that two interesting things that are coming up right at the beginning, though. So you read the book by Michael Hudson, And Forgive Them Their Debts. Do you want to kind of so Nate, I like how you brought up monopoly power, and that you have something to talk about with that one, and then you're talking about the forgive them their debts here, and then I kind of wanted to bring in a continued running narrative of what's happening to college towns all around the country right now. We just had University of North Carolina. They brought students into their campus on the 10th of August, and then they told them on Monday that, all of your courses are going to go digital by the 19th of August, so you can kind of go home, you can stay if you want to, or so forth. But yeah, what's up with this forgiving them their debts thing? What are these concepts all about?
yeah, for sure. Well, the book "And Forgive Them Their Debts" it's written by Michael Hudson, and basically he decided to leave economics in like the 80s or something like this, or 70s, and he went to get into archaeology. So he was interested in studying like the history of money. So they go up and they were able to dig up all the clay tablets from Babylonia, Mesopotamia, and Sumeria on how like debts essentially work, and like those societies. And basically what they used to do is in those societies is that they would do these debt jubilees every 49 years, with it basically you just forgive the debts. Now obviously if like an environmental disaster happened, like a massive flooding or a drought, they would just do it early. So maybe you're only 7 years in, they do it early, and basically what it would do is restore the economies. And because as Michael Hudson kind of puts out in the book, that the Mesopotamian society understood, for them, from their perspective at least, that debts grow faster than the ability to pay, and they saw this as a fact of the matter. So that they do these debt jubilees, and basically it was the societies that didn't do the debt jubilees way back when that would get conquered by the neighbors who did do them, because everyone would basically be in debt peonage to the creditors of those societies, and the palace couldn't recruit an army anymore, and they'd basically fall and collapse. So yeah, it was just talking about how it was really, really common way back when, but in our society today, we look at it as like, that's impossible.
Well,
it's unthinkable. Right?
So I'm actually gonna slightly say, don't we kind of do this now with the Federal Reserve Bank relieving the debts of the private banks? So like, don't we just really need to like shift them into like relieving our debts rather than, you know, kind of like fixing theirs?
Well, it's not quite the same in the sense of like, it's more of a
Yeah.
bailout rather than a jubilee. It's more of like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah. But like, if let's say the Fed had somehow had the power to just like take an eraser to the records, basically that's all you're doing, right? As opposed to like swapping the accounts, it would be like, I'm going to pull my eraser out, all these accounts gone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Nate.
would say with the Federal Reserve, you know, you could make part of their mandate, and we could do this at any time, by the way. Politically speaking, if the Congress wants to, they can make the mandate for the Federal Reserve anything. Okay, they could literally say, we want you to, as part of the mandate, instead of just focusing on stable prices, a certain unemployment rate, and like have, you know, supplying liquidity to banks or whatever, we're gonna actually, we want you to also focus on inequality, or we want you to focus on racial inequality, or we want you to focus on driving down consumer debt. But that's not part of the mandate. So the mandate is literally just there, get a little bit of growth, have a little bit of controllable inflation, and have a little bit of controllable unemployment. So they want to keep around like, you know, 3 or 4% unemployment is considered the natural rate of unemployment. Well, okay, but yes, what they effectively end up doing as an institution is simply bailing out or making or in our case, let's just be honest, providing infinite liquidity to the private banks. And so, while it isn't technically erasing debts like CPL said, it's still an infinite well of credit. So, yes, to answer your question, the Federal Reserve could do it. They simply don't have the political demand to do it.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly trying to say that what they're doing to the banking sector is a debt jubilee, but it's just that you can kind of, I mean, they're already bailing them out time and time again. And I was just trying to think, you know, wouldn't it be nice if they kind of like helped us bail out?
Well, they would. And now here's the thing, too, just to add on to that, you know, in the United States, people's incomes have not been rising for any significant amount of time. If you're looking at their productivity and their wages, and you actually try to reconcile those things, you've probably seen that chart before, but there's a massive deviation since the 1970s. It's only been getting worse. So where do people make up the lost wages? Well, they just end up borrowing. So if you look at what people are using their COVID money to do, that extra $600 in unemployment benefits, or that $1,200 check that we all got, or a lot of people, not everybody got, that $1,200 check, what were they using it for? Well, they're paying down debt. They're literally paying down credit card debt. So people in this country must borrow to survive. In fact, you must borrow to do almost anything. And the reason why you have to borrow is because you do not have enough money to finance it yourself. If people had a lot of wages, you would have higher down payments on homes, or maybe people just buy goods and invest in things outright, right? Like you would have 50% of your down payment for your house rather than like 10% or 5%. And then you'd be, you know, taking a huge loan. So you actually have smaller loan sizes if people are making more money, and you'd have less debt in general, right? You could do that. But unfortunately, we've shifted to a society that is simply relying on, like you were saying before, this sort of nonstop credit Ponzi scheme. Now, it's not that credit in itself is bad. It's just that we're using that to do all the heavy lifting in our economy rather than trying to actually address structural problems, you know, in the United States. So that's kind of where we are. Yeah.
I came across a video today that I was watching. It was with Hugh Hendry, that one guy that you had watched, but it was with like a different individual. And I'm gonna see if I can remember how they exactly framed it. And I want to put this forward to see kind of like both of your takes on this. The gentleman said that in order for the United States, paraphrasing, to maintain its position as the global reserve currency, it had to allow the hollowing out of the manufacturing and the job sector in order to go to foreign nations. That way, the United States could run a trade deficit with foreign nations in order to get their dollars into the bank accounts of the foreign countries, so that it was almost a necessity in order to allow the United States job market to collapse upon itself in order to keep the world tied to the United States dollar.
Well, I'd say that the story is real. It's a good story off the bat. Like when I first heard him say it, I was like, okay, like, it's a narrative. But at the same time, I also look at it from another angle in terms of, is it possible the United States world reserve currency could still be the world reserve currency while still having manufacturing in America? I mean, I kind of think of Germany, for example. Now, it's not the world reserve currency, but it is running a trade surplus as an export, though. Well, I'd basically say this is where my brain goes. Essentially, for those corporations that were paying American wages at the time, at the end of the day, it's so much more cheaper to get that cheap labor overseas, and it's better than your balance sheet. You might as well do it, right? Make more money. I don't see why there's no. I mean, a lot of the reason for countries either pegging themselves to the U.S. dollar or whatever. I mean, in some cases, a lot of it is done through, like economic pressure from the United States to say you kind of have to do it, right? Whether or not they have manufacturing, like I'm not sure, but at the end of the day, it's possible, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I would and I would also keep building on what CPL was saying. A lot of these narratives, we always have to be careful what's being built in retrospect, what is like the hindsight, and then what was actually being said and done at the time. So if you were going back to the initial stages of deindustrialization, it may not have been with the knowledge that, this is all about engendering and creating a super powerful...
I do want to jump in here with you, and I'm going to let you continue. I don't think that that's what they intended. I don't think that they knew that this was coming. All that I'm kind of saying is, like, it did end up getting a lot of dollars onto the balance sheets.
True.
You're
right. True. Yeah.
You're right about this in the sense that, like, in order to be a reserve currency, you need to be consuming a lot. You need to be buying all those goods. So at the bare minimum, regardless of manufacturing, you probably have to be running major deficits somewhere along the line for exactly the reason you said. All the other nations in the world, in order to transact their trade, must have dollars to do that in for most things. Now, there may be some sort of unilateral trade agreements, like maybe China has a special agreement with some neighbor, or maybe Pakistan has a special agreement with Afghanistan or something like that. But on the whole, if you look at like major commodities markets, where they all price it, well, they're priced in dollars. Oil is priced in dollars, iron priced in dollars, all that stuff's kind of priced in dollars. So, it's like, yes, in order to be a reserve currency, you have to be buying all that stuff because all those people want those dollars.
Yeah, you gotta have a deficit. Yeah.
So you're pretty much either the private sector or the government is going to be running a deficit. Either one. Each one has its own consequences, but yes, America has to be a debtor nation in order to be the reserve currency, essentially.
I've got a question that's somewhat related to this, and it's very complicated, so I hope you can help me get through it. I've been looking at the global remittances that go from, let's say that I am an Indian. We've brought this up in the channel before. I'm an Indian that works in Qatar, and I get paid. So I don't actually know what the currency of Qatar is. Let's just say that it's Qatari money.
Qatari dollars is fine.
Yeah.
Qatari dollars.
I won't say dollars just because I don't want to get confused with like but
Sure,
I get paid in Qatari money, and then I want to send my Qatari money back to India. Do they have the rupee? No, they have the
rupee. Yeah.
Okay, they have the rupee. When I send that money, does it at any point change into a United States dollar? Does it become a United States dollar to go back? Like, how does this happen to get from the Qatari currency to the Indian currency? Do either of you know how this would take place?
Well, if the goods that they're buying are priced, for example, so if they're actually going to go into the market, this is what I'm saying, like if they're importing oil,
I'm just saying, like, I'm saying like a family sends it to a family. Like, so, let's just imagine that, like, you're my brother.
Wire transfer.
Okay, so does it at any point turn into dollars and then it goes out into rupees? Or how does it get from the Qatari currency to the rupee.
Yeah, well, if you wanted to, here's the thing: if that family who's receiving this payment was in India and they have an account in rupees, you would probably pay some sort of small fee in order to convert that at that exchange ratio. So if it's like 100 Qatari dinars to 200 rupees or whatever, you'd have like your 2-to-1 ratio, and then you'd probably end up paying a fee. Now, there's probably banks that actually there are banks that specialize in this, right? Like if you think about like China, think about like when the Chinese trade with America, they have Chinese banks with accounts in the United States specifically for merchants to use, right? So it could be large, it could be Alibaba, has an account billions of dollars of money in their accounts that they're holding in dollars in America, right? And then when they do want to convert them into yuan, they'd be paying, or they would be exchanging them with a whatever the exchange rate would be. So China has a crawling peg to the dollar, so whatever it is, 7 renminbi to $1 or 70 yuan, so whichever one they use for their conversion. But yeah, like, no, you could probably, in this day and age, it's not like you actually are dealing with paper anymore. You're dealing with numbers on an account. So like when you're wiring something through, Western Union or whatever, I don't know, whatever service you use in Qatar, like wherever that account's going to end up, they'll probably pay some kind of fee to convert those into rupee. It doesn't necessarily have to turn into dollars. Okay, because we're just talking about transferring money. Now, if you're buying a commodity that's priced in dollars, you do have to have the dollars somewhere along the line, right? So, like, somewhere in there is a exchange in, like, you're going to change 100 rupees into $1 and then use that dollar to buy a good that's priced in $1, right? So,
do you have anything to add here, CPL?
No, essentially, I mean, unless that commodity, unless obviously picking up oil, you're going on U.S. dollars. But I mean, if there's just going from account to account, I imagine they would just exchange it at whatever the rate is, right? Currency to currency.
Okay, so then to transition to, not to stay on remittances, how big of a problem is this going to be that these nations aren't able to get this, big sector? Like it's looking like remittances are going to be down between 19 to 21% this year. Is this going to have a big impact on the smaller economies of the world where they're not going to have? I mean, we've seen that it's kind of like driving some families not to be able to afford food and such. But could this have any deeper issues?
Absolutely. Mexico, you expect them to get hit hard. A lot of Caribbean countries that are poorer, a country like Haiti, you expect them to be hit hard. Any sort of smaller developing country you expect to be hit extraordinarily hard when their labor forces that are working around the world and who are, like you say, they're basically like you're saying, remitting their income back to that country to spend in. If that's gone, I mean, you're literally losing tax revenue, you're losing effective demand. You could get deflation in those economies. You get exacerbated trade imbalances because the government isn't getting, say, like dollars. Like now, the Mexican government has to go find more dollars, right? If they have a pegged currency. So yeah, it could be an absolutely disastrous problem so long as COVID is here, when you're stopping this flow of income and currency around the world. Yeah, so it would be all over the place.
To ask you like a direct question, CPL, I guess. Let's talk about, I'm just going to use the country of Jamaica. Jamaica pretty heavily relies on United States tourism in order to bring in a ton of money. Could there be a double shock to Jamaica? One, because they don't have the money flowing through their economy. They don't have the tourists coming. They don't have people going to the restaurants. They're not purchasing the goods and so forth. But two, could the secondary shock be that their reserves of dollars plummet as they need to continue to bring in oil and other commodities that are going to add to downward pressure on their central bank balance sheets of having dollars, coupled because the dollars aren't going in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say, I know Jamaica already has been one of the really hard hit victims by the IMF and the World Bank with loans that they, loaning them US dollars. Obviously if tourism takes such a big hit that it ends up really hurting their economy, and probably will. I don't really know. They've had a pretty bad experience with the IMF and the World Bank. I mean, I feel really bad for Jamaica because they've been they've had a really hard time working against the IMF and World Bank, especially when you're going to be pegged to the US dollar. I don't know. You just need US dollars at the end of the day if that's how it works. And if the only people are gonna lend it to you, and no one's just going to be able to like stimulate your economy. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, it's going to be brutal. But I mean, in a lot of ways, a bit of a flip side with like a lot of countries that there will be a phase of difficulty and pain in a lot of regards, but it gives them an opportunity to re-examine perhaps production policy, industrial policy, economic policy, trade policy, so that they can build something where they're not in this situation again. I've seen Han Chang talk a little bit about this, but I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
I agree with you that it gives them the opportunity to. However, I think that I would have I would have rather see them have like a 5-year time window to try to like come
longer.
To come up with
into it by the totally. I mean, it's a raw deal, but yeah.
Yeah, because so what I'm like trying to say is like I am very happy that these countries are getting to reevaluate their economic systems, their manufacturing, their industry, their infrastructure, and so forth. However, doing it in a 3 to 6 month time window when you can't really get anything done is where like my worry was coming in. Let me see if I can like wrap up kind of like what I've been thinking about this part. And I guess like the question that I'm going to come to is, does it seem to be, I finally read The Deficit Myth, thanks to you, Canadian Populist Left. And now I'm big on, understanding about like the yellow dollars, which are the treasuries, and the green dollars, which is kind of like the hard dollars, if that makes sense. Is there a potential that due to, the lack of trade, the lack of travel, the lack of tourism, the downward consumption that is appearing to happen, could there get to be like a little bit of a liquidity crisis for the green dollar in kind of like the overall international economy of like, a nation needing dollars to pay for the oil or to pay for other resources or so forth?
I think there's absolutely potential for it. I mean, you have to look case by case to country, and each monetary system is different. But I mean, like in terms of whenever I think about like demand for dollars, I want dollars now. Hey, someone's got $5. I'll take a $5. Like I still got a demand for the U.S. dollar. It's massively needed. There's, I think there is demand for it. It's gonna be a lot of demand for it, and for the foreseeable future. I mean, at some point, unless an asteroid hits the planet, but it'll be around for a while. There'll be demand.
Yeah, if you're talking about it as a physical asset, like an actual piece of paper, a $5 bill, a $1 bill, a $100 bill, you could have logistical problems with that if people were demanding that. And indeed, we do have logistical problems with change. There are change shortages around. I mean, at least down in Philadelphia, like they don't even just round up now to the nearest whole dollar. And so you can have logistical problems with the circulation of physical things. However, the overwhelming majority of all these assets, whether it's our debt, our treasury bills, or whether it's our quote unquote our liquid currency, it's either book money, it's digital.
Yeah.
Every time you swipe your debit card, I mean, you're never even touching the paper.
I'm not really talking domestically. I was more thinking like, could the UAE's accounts run low on like what? Okay, so here, let me try to like frame this a different way. If United States consumption of foreign goods actually goes down and we issue less greens out to these foreign nations, but these foreign nations need the greens in order to buy the oil and the resources and so forth, could this lead to somehow like the Fed needing to figure out a way to give like money almost internationally in order to be able to keep like the transactions being cleared in dollars for the petrodollar? Like do you kind of see where I'm trying to get?
Yeah, there's a potential that the United States doesn't spend enough, or there's not enough dollars out there, and the Federal Reserve does indeed actually have lending facilities that will be there for liquidifying European banks and probably Asian banks as well, and any major large financial institution will probably have special deals and facilities for it to handle it. To be honest, I mean that's what they'll do. They already done it with like Europe, and they've done it with Japan before.
So somebody is saying the Fed opened 14 swap lines with foreign nations in the wake of COVID. So
yeah, and they could do as many as they wanted to. Technically,
can you CPL? Can you explain to me how one of these swap lines would work in either complex terms or in layman terms?
That very specific. I don't feel confident enough to be able to detail foreign swap lines specifically. No.
Do you want to take a stab, Nate?
Well, I'm saying like if those countries have treasuries, right? Or if they have any kind of government debt or U.S. debt that they can sell or make liquid, that they can actually sell it right there and make it liquid, right? So if there's a bunch of, say, banks in Peru or wherever, and they had a bunch of treasury bonds or T-bills or something like that, and maybe they couldn't necessarily sell them in their market and get their money that they need to there, but they need to sell them directly to the Fed and get that liquidity. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about liquidity. We're talking about making something that was less liquid, aka a
Right.
bond or treasury bill, and turning it into something more liquid. So it would be like reserves or something.
So do these transactions show up on the Federal Reserve balance sheet, or are these swap lines in like a shadow area that we can't even see?
Here as far as the shadow
This
accounts.
gets complicated. This gets complicated at this part.
But no, you could see, if for example, if you know where to look for each facility, you could see how many how much was being swapped. Yeah. Like for example, you can look at remember all the craze was at the end of 2019. What the hell was it?
Well, that was the overnight repos, but that was
the repos,
but that was
like,
domestically. So like
right.
I'm at go ahead.
Right, but like it's almost the same principle. But look, you barely see any repos being done anymore. It's trickled down to almost nothing. And actually, like I'm saying, like the real magic of the Fed is their psychological game, their psychological reassurances. The actual functional aspects of it, yeah, like they can go create liquidity for anybody. They could inject dollars into other banks if they wanted to. But remember, like they're probably what's happening is they're coordinating with the central banks in these other countries. It's not just like some random person on the street gets credit from the Fed.
It's directly central bank to central bank.
Yeah, and remember, those central banks are then likewise they're managing the reserves and the banks in their respective systems. So if you look at Qatar or Dubai, like there's probably a central bank there, or at least a currency board or something. There's somebody managing the debt. There's somebody managing the balance of payments there internally, like a clearinghouse.
I did read that China does not have this swap line with the United States. So one of the big countries that does not have one is China. Not that I just kind of wanted to add it in. I'm gonna try I'm gonna re-ask the same question again, and I apologize for re-asking the question. You said that you can kind of follow the swap lines and you can kind of tell where it pops up. Is that a part of like the $7 trillion Federal Reserve balance sheet, or is it kind of just like an actual overnight rate swap where let's pretend that I am, the Bank of Japan and you are the Federal Reserve Bank and I need 25 billion to buy oil. Do I just like temporarily transfer you 25 billion worth of treasuries and then you give me 25 billion of cash and then I buy the oil and then you hold the treasuries and I can buy them back? Does it like ever swap out or whatever? Like, I'm sorry that this is so complex.
There's all kinds of agreements. Yeah, this is the beauty of debt and financing, and you can roll in new debt, you can issue new debt, you can print more money to buy this debt, you can swap at any time. That's the beauty of it. This is why it's like the whole thing is debt. And so it just comes down to how you want to structure it and what kind of agreements you want to make. But exactly like you said, you could say, okay, this loan lasts 3 days, and after that, you got to either pay us back or give us something of equivalent value, maybe some kind of collateral sometimes, although that's kind of rare. This is literally just like currency swaps. This isn't really like it's not like super difficult. It's not like, for example, if like if a company declared bankruptcy in Chapter 11, and then you have to figure out each single creditor and okay, like what will they take and how are we going to restructure the deal, what will the new arrangement be, and how are we going to value all these assets. That's like complicated compared to this. This is literally like, okay, we need to liquidify American banks, or we need to liquidify an English bank up to the tune of $2 billion or something like that. I mean, they would do that anyway to the last resort, even in-house, right? So, like, think about the Federal Reserve. If somehow J.P. Morgan was down $1 billion in its end-of-the-night reserves or something like that, and then you need to have a certain amount legally, the Federal Reserve will be the lender of last resort, and they'll literally make that happen. They'll literally invent that right there on the spot for them to use. Of course, they'll be charging interest to the bank, but then the bank is hoping to keep on doing future business. It'll pay that back in the future, and they can do this basically indefinitely, unless there's major instability within one of those institutions that they're doing a lending with, which would be problems with their assets, or like when their net assets are worth less than what they paid for them. Then you're essentially you're underwater, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have if before the crash you had $100 billion worth of housing, that's what you're valued at, and now after the crash you just lost half. That means the bank lost half of its value right there. When half of its assets just lost half of their value, right? So that's their wealth, right? And in the meantime, the bank's making fees and are getting interest. That's like their little income stream. So as far as liquidifying things, I mean, that's the meme. That's literally a JPAL meme. They'll literally go into their computer and they will make as much liquidity as they need through reserves.
Mm-hmm.
and they can swap this with any country in the world, any financial institution that's in the Federal Reserve System. It's very easy to do. That's the thing about the bailout too. A lot of people in the United States think that oh, well, I see this all the time. Oh, it wasn't a bailout. It was a loan. It was a loan. It's like, dude, that is a bailout.
That's the bailout. That's the bailout.
When you would have failed and somebody bails you out, it doesn't matter if it's a monopoly man with a top hat or the Federal Reserve or who. That's a bailout.
Okay, another tough question. And
True.
CPL, I'll try to go to you this one first. And we're gonna have to jump through a few speculation hoops to maybe get there. The video that I was watching again earlier today was talking how in 2018 it was the first time that China ran a dollar deficit, meaning they spent more dollars buying resources, minerals, and oil than they brought in from, the United States, like buying Chinese goods, or like other nations buying goods and clearing them through dollars and so forth.
Yeah,
and the person claimed that this also factored in Chinese corporations taking the money that they sold, that they sold products in dollars, and they took the dollars and they gave them to the Chinese central bank, and the Chinese central bank still ran a dollar deficit when they had to buy all of their minerals and so forth.
Yeah.
The next part of this would take in that the prediction of Chinese oil consumption and resource consumption is going to continue to grow at whatever rate it is going to be predicted to grow at, and it's assuming that the flow of dollars into the country could potentially remain smaller than the outflow of dollars out of the country. If these things happened or actually came true, or like the Chinese did run down the dollars that they had to use to trade for oil or for resources or for other projects that they're working on outside of China, how difficult of a position does this put China in of trying to use the yuan through either a clearinghouse or so you can take it anywhere you want to from there.
Okay, sure. Well, in terms of China's basically losing more dollars than they're accumulating, is what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting to see what China will do. Obviously, if it has options. I mean, because I'm not a fly on the wall in terms of Xi Jinping's office. I'd love to be, though. I'd love to be listening in on those. However, who knows what they may do. Maybe they'll go more into Africa. I mean, we see them doing a lot of the infrastructure investment, and then later on they say, hey, if you come across any oil, who built this? And we saw that in Ethiopia. I think Ethiopia later found some oil after they give them a bunch of infrastructure development, and they said, all right, well, you can have the contract, right? So they're gonna have to try and China's very frictional with the U.S. in terms of the diplomatic relations. I know that the very, very tense in those regards, and China will obviously look to find other places to go, right? I think obviously they still need the U.S. The U.S. and China still need each other a lot, but China doesn't want to have to. I don't think China wants to have to be stuck with all their eggs in one basket, right? They're obviously building this one belt, one road for a good reason, right? It's not just for nothing. So.
I kind of just when I came to this realization today that China is potentially going to run out of dollars, which would cause them. I didn't think that would really cause them problems before. Up until pretty much today, I was just kind of okay, this is something that's going to happen, and then so forth. But then when I really sat to think about it today of how they need to use the dollars to get the oil from, we'll just say Saudi Arabia at the moment right now, because they are doing, I think they did a swap with Iran. They're trying to do a $400 billion investment with $400 billion yuan equivalent investment with Iran to hopefully that they can trade on the yuan back and forth. But Nate, do you have any thoughts on this at all? Or
yeah, and I think I want to make a bigger overarching point too. Is that remember, there's always a flip side to every issue. So when we're talking about specifically China, okay, they have tried or can do if they want to. In fact, any country can do this if they want to. There are no rules. There's no special set of laws of the universe. But Iran gets sanctioned all the time from the United States, and basically it's almost impossible to do business with Iran except through either using like a Eurodollar banking system, which is a whole nother conversation, or they'll actually try to set up a bank, and China tried to do this when American restrictions or sanctions were placed on Iran, and they were trying to transact in just yuan and I forget what the Iranian currency is called, but that's what they were doing. And so they both kept accounts of each other's currency in their country, and they would trade, and they would like to, I mean, to a degree. And then eventually America stepped in and got even angrier and whatever. But yeah, you could just accept other currencies on the face value of them. You don't necessarily have to have them backed by the dollar. But the flip side stuff is like this. People will say, "Oh my God, the dollar is losing its value." Oh my God. Okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, it has a whole lot of consequences. It's not just the American consumer. It's like, well, wait a minute. The lower the value of the dollar is, the easier it is to pay off American debt. Okay, so if you're a small country, you're fine with American dollars losing value. In fact, it's going to be easier for you to pay off your debts if you're Bolivia, or if you're Venezuela, or if you're Zimbabwe. Easier for you. Likewise, American manufacturing will look better, look like a much better deal, because you can now import more because the value of the dollar is now less. Now, what you brought up is another big problem that no one really talks about that much. Is what if the American government isn't spending enough money and putting enough dollars out there in the world? It is a problem. So if China can't get enough dollars, that is a problem. And so that would be a failure of the American government to preserve its place in the world as a reliable, trustworthy reserve currency, simply because they refuse to spend. They're literally not making enough debt. They're literally not doing enough spending in the United States.
Yeah, this is kind of
exactly why you said.
This is kind of where I'm at the moment, where like our private sector cannot keep up consumption at a high enough level to keep dollar reserves high enough in foreign central banks, that those central banks aren't going to have enough money to pay for the contracts in dollars, and they're going to have to look into different ways in order to buy the resources and buy the oil. And that's kind of where I got to today, and I thank you for helping me get through this.
Yeah, and it's a super important point. And this is, look, like on Twitch, and look, there's this whole political atmosphere of like trying to find a country that can stand in opposition to the United States. So everyone puts their hopes on China, or used to be putting your hope on the USSR, like this hope of an alternative. But it's much worse than this. Okay, China and America are the twin emps. Okay, they're the twin emperors. I don't know if anyone knows the World of Warcraft reference here, but literally they are the twin emperors of the world. China has their major productive base, major labor base. They have we're literally we are the financial Ponzi scheme and provider of that liquidity, provider of this debt security. So then they take that debt security as a centralized plan, quote unquote, communist or whatever government, or state planned, or whatever you want to call it. And then they take all that, and then they go and make out everything for the world, and then they go bring these things in.
So
they have billionaires, more of their companies. Like, I think more than half of the Fortune 500 companies are Chinese now. The biggest banks in the world are Chinese. The biggest construction banks in the world are Chinese. The biggest construction firms in the world are all Chinese. Literally, America's hand in hand. What we don't want to fall for is the face value propaganda of, oh my God, America's at war with China, and I'm like, the South China Sea, oh my God, another island or something like that. This is all something to drive certain sorts of paranoia and propaganda in probably both countries, because there's like hardliners in every country. There's like literally the hardliners in America that want to just like, we're gonna stop all trade with China and cut it off, and then there's the hardliners probably in China, doing the same. So using this as political hay. We are the same system. Like literally, America and China are like a fucking key. It's
super
like a key and a lock, and they're perfect. They're literally made for each other. Literally, you have the centralized proletarian or whatever state in China taking the financial Ponzi scheme surpluses of the United States, and we're literally buying their shit.
Okay,
if America didn't buy their shit, how would they grow? Where would the 10% per year growth be?
Right. So I want to try to return to what I said about moving manufacturing abroad in order to consume internationally. That way, our currency gets into foreign nations. And I want to try to tie this into how I think that China is trying to do it differently. And let's see if we can kind of like make any connections. So the United States encouraged a lot of manufacturing to go to China. And then we purchased the finished goods from China and we brought them back to the United States and we consumed them. I think that we agree about this.
100%, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to me, it seems that the way that China wants to get other countries to begin to respect accumulate and or use the yuan is rather than export their manufacturing, which would hollow out the Chinese job base, which they need to keep their populace employed. They're trying to either, build the infrastructure, build the energy sector and development, but only bring back raw materials. So to me, it doesn't seem like China wants to really import any type of finished good. All they want to do is import goods that they can then refine, and then they can sell the refined good back out of their market. Does this make a little bit of sense?
It did a long time ago, but you see, I would agree with you in like the 90s or early 2000s, but we don't want to we don't make China too much of a monolith, and the reason is this is very important too because it plays into the political system. But imagine saying, oh well, everyone in America is the same, right? Like all Americans have one goal: it's to be patriotic, salute the flag.
I'm mostly just saying the Chinese main government plan of ways to get.
I'm talking,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying like the economics. So, like every region in the United States is economically different. They have vastly different interests. There's the Rust Belt, there's the Sun Belt, there's the tech people, there's whatever's left of manufacturing, there's agriculture, and then even within those there are separate interests, right? So when you go to China, if you go to each little region of China, they aren't all just centrally governed, like top down. They all have the same goal. No, like some want more financings. Like literally, you go to the Pearl River Delta. What do they want more of? They want more international capital. They want more international financing. They're literally begging Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and European banks to come on in, do the speculation. Other places are still focusing on that heavy manufacturing. They still use a lot of oil. They still produce a lot of steel. Still try to produce a lot of concrete. And then there's people in certain areas of China, in certain states there, different regions, they want to actually start going to those higher order goods. They actually want to start making like semiconductors. They want to start making computers and electronics and get more into that. They actually want to transition more into light industry rather than just stick with heavy industry. And you'll see the heavy industry move off to places like Vietnam or I don't know, like Thailand or Bangladesh or somewhere else like that. That's where you expect to see the new heavy industries go. And what the Chinese really want, and accurate, like you're saying, is they really want growth. They need 8, 9, 10% growth. They need to sustain that. And if you don't sustain that, then literally you will have political issues in China, because when we're talking about like migrant labor forces in India or China, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people. We're not just talking about like in America, like 3 million, people who live between Mexico and the United States and go back. No, we're talking about literally 150, 200 billion people.
I just want to let CPL jump in if you want to.
Yeah, 100%. When they're talking about like this breeds instability if they can't keep up these growth rates. Like I think that, I mean, every government doesn't want instability, but for China and its history, like specifically, that's the one thing that it really doesn't want, and it learned that hard with the Century of Humiliation, right? Lots of disorder. So they're gonna want to keep that going. So when it comes to China, like I'm sure that, like what's they saying, I'm sure that there are some companies in China where they'd be interested in exporting manufacturing to Africa and paying a lower wage there and have it imported in China. Then there's some that might want to stay in China and whatever, right? So
I 100% agree with you, but wouldn't the Chinese, let's just say the monolithic Chinese government, I know that you said that we shouldn't go down this route, but wouldn't the overarching national plan of the Chinese government be, we don't want our manufacturing to go out the same way that the United States ship theirs out. So like, you can let some go out, but you don't want as much to go out. But what we do want to go out is we want the yuan to go out, and we want minerals, resources, and oil to come in. So to me, it kind of seems like their whole grand vision of doing the Belt and Road is finance the bridges, finance the railroads, finance the energy, and then convince the nations that they are doing these developments with to let them use the yuan to get the quartz, to get the oil, to get the, whatever else like they might need.
Well, the problem is if you want to be a surplus nation, then you can't cry about the being the international currency, the reserve currency, because you need to be net negative. You need to be a net debtor nation. You need to be net deficit. So if you're running surpluses with every country, you're running a surplus with America and Kenya and in Germany, you're running surplus after surplus. Okay, this is what you're making the things.
Well, this is kind of what I'm saying. I think they only want to run a surplus with the United States, and I think they'd like to run a deficit with all of these other places, but they don't want to run a deficit on importing consumer goods. They want to run a deficit on importing raw goods and material. That's kind of what my overarching thought is. Yeah.
Well,
right or wrong.
I'd say China's attitude right now is, they have a very heavy focus on manufacturing and production. I mean, I'm sure some things will change and adapt. Like I remember when the 2008 crash. I mean, how many new jobs did they just create? It was like millions of jobs were created. Like, bing, bada boom, right? We're gonna ship you across the country and set up a whole new town and get building again. So I mean, China does have that ability to do that, but I just leave it at there. I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, I'm saying like China is an absolutely amazing economic case study. Absolutely incredible. I'm trying to think something
Totally.
even like that. I mean, even America's probably not a good comparison with China. I mean, maybe Japan, at the speed at which Japan modernized, like post Meiji Restoration. Maybe there's some comparability there, but like it's absolutely the transformation in China is absolutely phenomenally fast. It's probably going to continue to be fast. The one advantage of having the government the way it's structured in China, with maybe some of the downsides like the social credit system, although you can argue that America also has a fucked up unwritten shadow
I would.
credit
I
system.
would.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would.
but, yeah, exactly. Like, like it's like, oh yeah, people in America with horrible credit do great. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, in China, they'll just on a dime. So no, we're doing this policy now, and that's what they're gonna go with. They're gonna try and start turning things that way. No, but but like I'm saying before, this is why we gotta be careful. Different regions of China, different states in China, they all have to be figuring out ways to gain revenue. So that's why even in China, there's all kinds of like little property schemes and bubbles and scams, just like you'd find anywhere else. And there are things maybe you would see more or less of depending on where you are. But it's kind of like that whole idea of like every state in America is a laboratory. Well, that's kind of true in China too. Every little region, every little
Totally.
state, every little province is a little laboratory. And if the central government sees, oh wow, it's really worked in Guangzhou, well, let's start applying it in all of our cities. We'll start applying this in all of our four whatever nominal capitals. I forget what they call them. There's like different like little regional capitals in China besides like Beijing's the national capital, but like there's these like large cities. We'll start doing, oh wow, look at how they did the sidewalks over here. That's great. Let's start making this standardized, and they can do that. And that's the power of having that sort of I guess like one party sort of system. They don't have a Republican Party or Democratic Party just sitting there flailing around. Like, I don't know. I think China's very strong. Yeah, I think China's very strong. I think rumors of its demise, or even like rumors of the United States demise, or like they're overstated in a certain way, because China and America are literally, I'm not saying that they're the same country, but what we see today is the emergent property of their cooperative relationship. So this geopolitical relationship now is the result of all of our cooperation. We can say as many things as you want, but guess what still runs smoothly? China-US trade.
Mm-hmm.
Still smooth, even with the tariffs and stuff. They still just don't ask any questions, take the dollars, they take them, they give us the goods.
I would add too about with China, like what's really interesting about it is like in the bureaucracy, you might your first job might be like in charge of some little district, and they'll give you like a list of, it used to be 20, but now it's like 100. Here's like 100 things we want to accomplish, experiment, right? And everyone will do different things, and then those people that hit the checklist and come up with some bonus surprises, they go, all right, we're promoting you to this new larger area that you're going to manage now. Do it again, and they give it a go. And this is how they do a lot of their experimentation in each little region. And they send officials to countries like Sweden, Finland, different countries in Africa, South America. They'll send people out and be like, yo, what are you doing over here? Like, what are your policies? Like, show us like what you're researching, like how you approach policy. And then they go back and they talk with people, and at least they're sending people out there trying to learn from other countries and then adapt what they can, and they bring it home. It's a very strange dynamic. I always thought, yes, like it's still totalitarian, like it's not a democracy, right? Like it's a totalitarian country, but it still understands a certain amount of dynamics. It's not like super static. It is static, but it's also dynamic at the same time. China's economy, it is fascinating to study.
There's something that I wanted to talk about in the United States that is completely unrelated from all of this kind of stuff. So do you have anything that you want to kind of like add in before I shift it back to United States land?
Oh, in terms of like international money,
or just like what kind of what like we were chatting about there. Oh, hello. Good evening, Zero. Gonna put this
welcome.
I would say always be careful that someone's always make sure that someone's not trying to sell you something, right? Like if, for example, if you just listen to Peter Schiff, he's got one piece of advice: buy gold. Right. Now, is he sponsored by gold? Does he have vested interest? Who knows? But
Well, he
when people
runs a company that sells gold, so yes. But
yeah, and I want to say this too, like the super pessimistic and the super optimistic are to be kind of disregarded. Someone who just thinks, oh yeah, hey, no, we're gonna have 300% GDP growth over the next 100 years, and it's gonna make up for climate change. You got to throw those people out because they're out of their minds. And the people saying, oh my God, this is it. Like, oh, this one dip in the market right here. Oh, this one devaluation right here. That's it. No. The world is just it's far more complicated than that. You're far more likely the thing that's most likely going to end the system isn't so much like China or someone else wanting to become a reserve currency or where do we do the production on Earth. It's just going to be the environmental collapse is the most guaranteed surefire thing that will most likely happen. If you're looking at like probabilities of like what's more likely, global environmental catastrophe or the United States military like being overthrown by the people and the environment it's coming down. It's just coming down. Like the military hegemony is probably here to stay for the foreseeable future, unless there's some kind of massive ramp up in bellicosity around the world. But I think China's just happy to do what they're doing. They're going to keep pushing into Africa, South Asia, wherever they want to do. They're going to keep doing it, and we're not going to be able to stop them unless we're going to actually sit there and start wars. But why would we start wars? We're not even doing anything with those resources anyway. The only people that will be having an impact on those types of things are the American foreign interests, basically. Like literally, like Saudi Arabia is calling in the American military strikes on their enemies, or like Pakistan is calling in us to help them with their. Like that's who's. It's like the minerals in Afghanistan. Not to go on a total top off thing here, but like everyone's complaining, oh my God, there's so much mineral wealth in Afghanistan. Well, what are we gonna do with that mineral wealth? Put it on a plane and take it to Detroit and make what out of it? No, the Pakistan, the Afghan minerals are going to go through Pakistan, then they're probably going to go over road or by train or by whatever to China to make electronics, to make cars or whatever. That's where they're going to go. So it's going to end up in China anyway. So what the like? That's what I'm saying. Like, oh, America's there for the mineral rights. For who? Not for some Joe Schmo in Missouri. Some guy, some other capitalist out there in the world, some other major interest. That it's not for. Anyway, that's what I'm saying. All this global relation stuff and the grand theories. I think it's better to just go with every state's trying to maximize their advantage.
Mm-hmm.
It's just easier to do it that way because what can you trust? What can we trust of U.S. news even, right? Like,
yep. I did like being able to ask a couple questions of, do we think that foreign countries are going to have enough dollars to continue trading in the. Like this is kind of where I think it's at least like worth talking about a little bit because of tourism patterns and consumption patterns. But I have a huge like shift into a different topic. There's a homeless camp in Philadelphia that they were talking about breaking up. I think by tomorrow, down near JFK Boulevard. The mayor Bill de Blasio is looking at moving 13,000 New York City homeless people out of hotels and back onto the streets because they're complaining, we're getting like riffraff and all this kind of stuff. And like Manhattanites are like kind of bitching and moaning about all this kind of stuff. And a lot of eviction protections are coming up that they're going to be like going away. And I was trying to figure out like, is there a way kind of like respecting markets? I don't have a better terminology of putting this at the moment right now, but is there a way that we can temporarily find a place for homeless people to live throughout the wintertime without like I guess like I don't want to say like upsetting things like too much, but just is there a way that it can just be done like politically and mechanically? And here was kind of like what I was coming to. Hotels have sprung up everywhere across the entire country, in small towns and big towns and cities and all this kind of stuff, and they're all sitting there empty, and they're mostly going to be sitting there empty for like a long time. They're not going to be filling up. The tourism isn't coming back. The business travel is not coming back. A lot of them are going to go bankrupt, and I think that they would have already gone bankrupt if they didn't get the loans from the PPE, and all that kind of stuff. So if we opened up the municipal lending facility from the Federal Reserve to the municipalities at a 0% loan, couldn't they buy up the distressed hotels in their cities, move the homeless people into the hotels because they can buy them for maybe like 60 cents on the dollar because they're just, I mean, they're going out. They have to like get out somewhere, or they have to sell out somewhere. Keep them there for whatever duration is required. And then when the tourism sector finally comes back, or the business travel finally comes back, the municipalities could then resell the property back out to the private sector in order to make a profit, that they could take that money and then invest into building actual affordable housing for everybody in their cities.
Sure.
Sure, I mean,
Technically, sure. That's like a. If this is a game of chess, yeah, that could all be a legal move. Assuming the hotel wants to sell to you, and so they want to sell the municipality. Otherwise, you have to talk about like eminent domain. You're going to seize it or something like that.
Yeah, like when I think of, for example, I don't remember the exact ratio. It's like for every homeless person, there's like 5 to 6 empty houses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, functionally speaking, you could just credit the appropriate accounts and put them in those houses. I mean, so long as those houses are for sale. I mean, politically, that's another question, but like, yeah, technically you could do that.
Yeah, I was just trying to think, like, is this like more quote unquote palatable to like the free marketers and even like the Dems or the Republicans? Because like I'm agreeing with you. You could just put money in an account and you could buy.
Oh yeah, the Dems and Republicans are in la la land. Like they wouldn't even be considering. Like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Get out of here. We need to balance the books. You know, this budget. You know, I don't have they're in a whole nother world.
And basically nothing is palatable to the free marketers, and I mean literally like they're acting like there's this world that never existed. First off, it never existed, but they act like it's there. That there is like this real. There's just like clarity of reality past this veil of all this annoyance and interference and all these pesky little events and pesky governments and pesky. There is somewhere out there. There's like a market. Now, they're already delusional, so you'll never appease them. They're just they're people who simply ignore history and just conveniently argue for what benefits their own material interests, which might just be privatizing the post office or fuck the homeless people. I mean, this is ultimately what I'm getting here is the problem in America is not like C-Torin, you laid out a good possible technical argument. You could totally do that. Commercial real estate is going belly up. There might be some sellers in that market. Who knows how many of those? First off, all those skyscrapers around Central Park in New York, how many of those are even inhabited year round? How many even have people living in there? Oh, they're property scams. Okay, well, put the homeless people in there. Let them live in a nice 5-star fucking little condo. You could do that. Okay, there's literally nothing. The Federal Reserve can get right in on it. But guess what? It's the mentality of not only the people in the government, but it's the mentality of this overarching sort of hostility to, like, say, homeless people, or hostile to people who are struggling.
And that's kind of why I was trying to frame it in a way that the municipalities would make a profit off of reselling back into the private sector from buying the distressed commercial properties. Like I was really just like, I'm trying to get through like all of these like things that you're talking about and that you're rightly bringing up in order to be like, well, this is going to do good and it's going to turn something good for the municipal budget. You could have
ready. Congress comes together tonight and they say, we want a new mandate for the Federal Reserve, end homelessness in the United States, or reduce it as much as possible year over year. Okay, and then what we have is literally the homeless housing lending facility. Oh my God! And how do they make that? Oh, they just made it up like literally all the other facilities. Just make it up. Mm-hmm. You leave let little BlackRock manage it. You give them a fee because guess what? You're already infinite. Like Bernanke and Jerome Powell and everybody else.
QE, let's go.
Oh yeah, you're already infinite. No, that's fine. Oh my God! Like this banker there needs money. Sure, no problem. Okay, guess what? There's another emergency. It's called homeless people need housing. Oh, do you need to put some people to work? Well, the Federal Reserve's been begging for fiscal stimulus. Okay, now we can hire people to build housing, or we can buy already existing housing, or we can do just about anything to solve the homeless issue, but we can't because, there's just no money in the budget, or you have idiots who believe in austerity, absolute idiots. And honestly, the people still pushing out austerity method that we can't do anything, we don't have the funding, are just one of two answers. They just don't know how federal government financing works, or they actually just have an agenda to keep people poor. They want it. It's literally, they want this system. They want the inequality. They want the suffering. They want to step over a person in the street. That's what they want. And that's the only thing you can conclude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is one of those two things. And like I know, like for those that like understand it and still argue for austerity, I can't stand those people. But I understand there's a lot of people out there that they just relate their personal experience to a federal budget. Right, like I get that. Like that's totally an innocent mistake, right? But like, if you can explain to someone, you can go through the whole thing on how it works, and afterwards they're still like, "Oh no, we're bankrupt. Just cut food stamps, Social Security." I mean, then you got some cringe going on there.
Yeah, I was just like I said, just trying to think of something that like I could convince even just figure out a way to convince the political class of like, okay, like you can do this, you can fund it, it can be done like quickly. Yeah.
I wish, dude. You know what? There's like this dream. I used to think this too. Like, if I could just craft, imagine I had this ultimate PowerPoint, 15 slides. I tell people exactly how it works. I show them. I literally lay it out like slam dunk, slam dunk. The people will consider you a hero. They'll make statues after you for this. All they're gonna say is that they're so caught up in either one thing of being lobbied to death and supporting the system so much, or they, like I'm saying, like they actually think. Even FDR was saying stuff. Even FDR was treating the American Treasury and the American budget and all that, like the U.S. budget, as a household thing, as a household item. They think that they literally just don't believe that there's enough money. They think you're talking about something else. But they don't like we were saying before. All this is just debt. The paper dollar in your hand is a debt. The accounting entry in the bank is a debt. The Treasury bond you own or whatever that you bought on the secondary market, that's all debt. It's all debt. The whole world is debt. And what is it really? It's just promises.
I guess so. Somebody just linked me an article. Gavin Newsom was pushing to parlay short-term federal pandemic relief into long-term remedy for the state's homeless crisis. He would send counties $600 million in federal funding starting next month in order to actually buy some of the hotels or motels and house the homeless people. So I guess, I mean, maybe there's like somebody out there that's like trying to do this.
I'm a little bit surprised by that. The governor is actually even. So that's
it's from Politico too. So I mean, it's not like
it's not like fakenews.com. Yeah, it's
Politico. But yeah, that is that's like good. Now the article is from the 3rd of June. So I'd be curious, can anybody out there in Chatland find like an update into, did any of this go forward? Did anybody actually buy anything or what happened? So thank you for linking this in.
I was going to add too, in terms of like, this is one thing I never ever see. Like I'll watch B&M Bloomberg, right? I was watching it today a little bit. And there's a guy on there talking about Canada's federal spending. So obviously we did a massive amount of federal spending into the economy, CERB and et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, oh, with this debt, we're going to have to pay this down. We're going to start cutting expenditures, and I never, ever see anyone ask the question to these people, when does the monopoly issuer of the currency run out of money? Like, no one will ever ask them this question. And I'd love to ask them that, like, how much money, like, when do we run out then? Like, if we're going to be broke, when do we go broke as the monopoly issuer? Like, I would love to see them ask that on B&M Bloomberg, and just to see what would happen. Just that simple question. Just that's it. I just love to see that, but unfortunately.
You remember in Philly with Hahnemann Hospital, some private equity fund guy he owned it, and he was closing it down because he wanted to turn it into condos. And so the crisis hit, and the city's like literally like in legal battles there. But Hahnemann was one of the hospitals in Philly that was serving poor and homeless people. And nothing came of it. They couldn't do anything about it. So to this day, he still owns that hospital. It's still just going to turn it into condos during one of the worst pandemics in our history.
We're the biggest city in the country that doesn't have a public hospital.
Exactly. It's like the city should have just said, fuck you. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, in China, they would have taken care of that guy, if you know what I'm saying. And they said, this is now a hospital for people.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as people, I understand not a lot of people like China, but like, sometimes... Like, look what happened. Remember, what was it, in 2013? They had the head of their version of the Food and Drug Administration when it was found out that he was doing double dealing and he was totally corrupt, taking bribes and China had like a food poisoning problem. Basically, they were adding different kinds of additives into food production and all that. You know what happened to him? That's what happened to him. I'm saying like sometimes I'm at the point I'm saying like people like Jeff Bezos, they need to fear us. These major super wealthy people, they need to be afraid. They actually have to be afraid. They have to think that we're coming for them, or nothing's gonna get done. That ultimately that's what it comes down to. Because like you're saying, look, the money, like CPL said, the money is infinite. The infrastructure is here. Why in Philadelphia didn't they just take care of this? Because we got to respect the private property rights. Oh yeah. Oh, the worst pandemic. Oh yeah. It's an equity fund manager. Yeah, that is your property. It's all yours, bud. Oh, fuck you. That was the right answer. And so, okay, take it to court or whatever, But in the meantime, you're at least treating people who are homeless who might have COVID, for Christ's sake. Like, I don't know. This country is so fucked up that I don't even know if there's an actual political solution.
Like, it's interesting to note here. Like, I have a quick little bit. I remember I have this on my screen from in terms of like billionaires. So between mid-March and mid-May, during the lockdowns, the wealth of America's 600 plus billionaires ballooned by 434 billion, according to a report by Americans for Tax Fairness, pushing the wealth of those 600 Americans to a combined 3.4 trillion dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, they have so much goddamn money. And it's so sad that you don't
Yeah.
even have, like, hospital treatment.
I
It's
want- yeah.
insane.
I have one more question to ask about towns, and then I wanted to go into your topic on Monopoly. If you wanted to give us a little bit of a preview for what you've been coming across with that one.
It's not that big. Yeah.
But I mean, we could talk about Monopoly for a long time, so it could become big. I was looking at and I might have even mentioned it on this podcast, the University of North Carolina, where they got the students into school on the 10th of August. Then they told them on the 17th, well, all your classes are going to be digital. And I was just watching a Bloomberg video before we got onto our show tonight. Which, by the way, if anybody likes the show this evening, you can find us at twitch.tv/Canadian Populist Left. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to check out and hang in on the book club. You could go to twitch.tv/SBTV_. Monday, Wednesday, Friday evenings around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk about all of these kind of things. And I turn my camera on when I turn it on. But you can come hang out with me at times, and you can go through some either international articles or some books or so forth. Also, if anybody wanted to put in a little bit of a donation or some kind of super chat or something like that, I am going to start to ask every once in a while during the show if anybody wants to throw a donation in. If any money comes in during the shows, we're going to split all the money between the group of us that's on here, and that'll be kind of just a nice little thing for us to do. So I was watching the Bloomberg video, and they said that there's about 47% of universities that are doing at least hybrid classes, if not full online courses or so forth. And Nate, you and I live in Pennsylvania. You and I both know State College, Pennsylvania, and Penn State football, and how that town okay, so I went to Penn State. The town has a population of, let's say, 80,000 people. And then every year, 45,000 students move into the town, and 7 days out of every year, 8 if you want to include the blue and white game, or 7, if there's not enough home games or so forth. 250,000 to 500,000 people flood into this little town in the central part of Pennsylvania. They put money in their parking meters. They throw money into the bars. They buy T-shirts from the downtown businesses. They stay in the hotels. They stay in the Airbnbs and everything. So what I'm painting all of this backdrop for is how I'm in 100% agreement with you that our government can fund what needs to be funded. When we are going to have contagions in so many different sectors, well, I guess there's two questions. One, what's even just going to happen to these college towns because they're effed, But two, when you have literally hundreds of different contagions, is there even a way that a political group could be intelligent enough to get all of the money into all the different sectors that's needed? I mean, we need Medicare for all, but they're not doing that at the moment, so we need people to have money to pay for their health care. We need our state and municipal budgets to get better. We need the homeless people to be housed. We need the hungry people to be fed. So take it, I guess, from wherever you may like.
I would basically just say, in terms of pandemic, you're better overdoing it a little bit than underdoing it. And, in terms of, it'd be nice to be able to, bring up the data, look at the maps, what needs what where. But when something hits you like this, for me, you just need to get money into every single person's bank account. They'll handle whatever their bills are as each agent. I think you have 24 hours. It's you don't necessarily have time. I think the best thing to do would be to just stimulus, essentially. It's not like a stimulus, it's just to keep the thing basically where it is, and you can kind of figure out what the hell's going on. But
yeah, for some things, you brought up the football game, it's pretty much over for them. I mean, they might try to take some crazy risks, I don't know, and trying to have football, or it's obviously a huge industry. You can see, I think about not just towns, but whole countries. Sometimes their whole economy is tourism, and they're going to be getting those things back online as fast as they can. But honestly, it's the virus's timeline, not ours. And
True.
that's really going to be dictating that sort of public health. I mean, it should be. And any look, if this rational society exists that the economists say exists, we should be waiting. We should really trying to focus on the virus and getting rid of it.
True.
Yeah,
True.
it's like, you wouldn't be trying to risk like recouping 3% of your GDP or something at the expense of like 400,000 more dead people. You'd be thinking about like, okay, we have to do whatever we can to shut it all down while keeping people alive.
Somebody just typed in, I think Chapel Hill has already nearly filled their quarantine residence halls. I'm in another university, but my co-teacher just got tested for COVID today, waiting for results. And we're having to restructure everything in our department, and we just opened for classes on Tuesday. That infrastructure has already had contact with 100 different students. And you see this, and you see this happening into the public schools in Georgia, where
totally.
on the second day of opening, they're quarantining the entire district.
Matt, what could go wrong with people coming in from all over the country or all over the state to go to school and share tiny little cramped like dorms and classrooms? Who would have thought something would have gone wrong?
And they're making kids sign waivers before they go that they can't hold the universities liable. And so this.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god. This is terrible.
Well, and another problem that's going to be happening is the universities are so dependent on their mess halls and their recreational centers for bringing money in that they're gonna have a deficit in that area. Additionally, so I was thinking about this the other night. Okay, the public education system, elementary, middle school, and high schools, they need a ton of money right now in order to reopen. They need PPE, they need to pay teachers, they need to pay nurses, they need to do all these things. But also, like, I'm sure that they plan buying food with vendors for like a month ahead or 45 days ahead. Like, there's a lot of food that goes through the education system in order to give kids lunches and so forth. How are these food shocks going to continue to happen through our chain when we're going to be going through another quarter where we're not eating food away from home the same way that we were before? Like, and I'm kind of just rambling, but like, let's say that we even gave public schools all the money that they thought that they needed to reopen safely. Are you going to have 400,000 different schools scrambling to buy PPE and plexiglass dividers and gloves and masks and everything? Like, there's not enough supply out there to, like, even if you gave the schools $1 trillion right now and said buy anything that you need, there's not enough goods and products out there to buy everything that they would need in order to actually open up.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an absolute. I mean, I know. I think a lot about just like and I mean, there's tons of complications happening that I don't even know about as well. But like, even just the whole, what kind of psychological dimensions this will have on people too. Yeah, I can't. Even for me, it's not as bad in Canada, obviously, as the American numbers. But like, I'm intentionally not hanging out with friends. Like, we have to play a game on the internet or something. Like, I miss hanging out with people. I miss being able to hug people and like, touch people. You gotta like stay away, and like everything's like, okay, I guess if I want to talk to people, I'm gonna go on the internet, which is good. I mean, I like this, but there's a certain it is a little weird that you don't what I'm trying to say is specifically too, like for kids and their development, like how this is going to affect them, because I know a big part of school is the socialization that you get, and you figure out like, oh, don't say that because that hurts someone's feelings. You start feeling all that stuff out where you can't, how to be social and that sort of thing. And just worry about what it's going to be like for kids. I can imagine like for like an 8 or 9-year-old, like,
it's going to scar them forever.
Friends,
it's going to scar them forever.
I mean, like you gotta sit at home and just not go see your friend Johnny down the street or Susie or whatever, right? So I worry about that too. I mean, just to take a little bit off the economics, but it's stuff like that I don't know about, and I worry about, and what kind of like dimensions all this sort of stuff will create. But
I don't often bring that up because it's like too dark for me to think about, like the damage that it's got to be causing to people. Like I mean, families. I was reading, they can't afford not to go to work. But if they work, they can't afford to leave their kids at home. And like, you can't. And I know that I'm like tying it back to dollars when like you're talking about like the actual just mental damage that it's like doing to everybody.
But it's true, yeah.
It's just
financial stress,
well, it's too dark for me to think about how this is like impact. I mean, I'm kind of lucky that I can deal with like not being with people, but like it's caught up to me. I want to go out. I want to see people. I want to like I'd love to just go play like a 3-on-3 pickup basketball game, but like,
That's not happening.
you
That's not going
you
down.
can't
Yeah.
really even like do that at the moment. So like, I've not really thought about the mental damage that that these ongoing things are doing to a lot of people. Because also then it can be turned into a certain talking point for certain people as to why why you just gotta throw all the doors back open again, and then like you're getting into a whole weird thing. But to bring it back to like what's happening with the childcare costs, they're charging people about $100 for 6 hours, to watch a kid. Are you? I mean, who's making $600? Like, so you're going to be spending $500 a week to have your kid be watched? How, where are
Yeah.
you making money for that? Go ahead,
Yeah.
Nate.
Yeah, the problem is when these kinds of crises happen, every country, like, there's probably no country on earth that like perfectly handled every aspect of the coronavirus. I mean,
Sure.
Spain fucked up early on. A lot of European countries kind of fucked up early on. A lot of people did. I mean, reality of it. But it always strikes me how America is constantly exposed. It's like we're a sports team that says we're the best sports team ever, and we lose every game by like 20 points, like the way the Sixers are losing right now to the Celtics, right? And it's just like, oh, you're in a major pandemic where hundreds of thousands of people are dying. It's extraordinarily dangerous. Oh, you don't have universal healthcare system, so people lose their jobs, or they lose their health coverage through their jobs. What are you supposed to do now? Go to the hospital and get a $17,000 ER bill? Okay. Well, no. Now you have to stay working because you're an essential worker or something like that, or you don't have enough money to just you can't just retreat to the Hamptons and work from home on your laptop, or go from wherever they do in San Francisco, go out to the wine country in California, go to the Napa Valley or wherever, rent out a little high tech cabin and just sip on your wine while you do your bullshit app, right? No, these people actually have to be on the front lines. They actually have to be working in the supermarkets. They actually have to be working in all those close quarters that no one else, all the rich people, don't want to. And who's that always fall on? It falls on black people. It falls on brown people in this country. And those are the people who are out on the front lines. Those are the people who have the greatest risk. Those are where most of the deaths are. And of course, it also includes old people too, which, oh, wait a minute, America doesn't give a fuck about old people? Oh my God, color me shocked, because we don't.
I think
We don't care about children. We don't care about old people. We don't care about anything. And this country just is exposed.
Zero Core, I can't tell if you're muted or if I have you muted, just FYI. I think I just read that the Latin population has a 5 times higher mortality rate in the 40 to 70-year-old age group than the white population does. And the minority death rates they're massively higher across like any age demographic. Yeah. I don't have much else to say.
Yeah, no, because I'm saying, like, okay, we need these systems. We're being exposed for the things that we need. You need a healthcare system. You need a childcare system. You need systems that supply food to people. And then you were bringing up food prices. Well, food prices are like okay, we talk a lot about inflation and little asset prices are inflating and blah blah blah. But what could actually be a real problem? Here's a real economic problem. You could have deflation in agricultural markets, where farmers aren't making enough money. They're not borrowing. The loan, if you look at the amount of money farmers are taking out and borrowing, it's down. It's historically down. It's been down the last 19 quarters straight. Okay, and then they're having a hard time paying back loans. There's major droughts in the Southwest. There's major 11 million acres of crops just got destroyed in at the derecho in Iowa alone.
Yeah, so I want to ask you, can Iowa come back from that? Like, can these farmers recoup, and like, are they going to be able to plant next year, or are they going to have to sell off land in order to...
They need and probably will get a certain amount of government aid, but they desperately need government aid at all times. Basically, this is how farming in America works. And of course, all those farming aids are incentivizing horrible farming practices, which we're shooting ourselves we're shooting ourselves in the foot in the long term and the short term in the United States. It's so, but yes, they're going to need assistance. They absolutely need assistance. There's going to be tons of people who can't survive. Yeah.
Did you see the article that claimed that due to all of the corn that's there, it actually changes the humidity and it changes the intensity that either heat waves could be or storms could be, because like something about like having such like a monoculture across like such a large swath of land. Yeah, so like there's so much corn in that part of the region that it exacerbates the hot temperatures when they come in, and it makes the storms even stronger when they do come around.
It's all about the microclimate, and that's absolutely true. You see microclimate effects in all kinds of different scenarios. Urban heat islands, people are probably familiar with those, but cities are always hotter than rural areas around the world. I mean, even in the middle of the desert, the cities in the desert are hotter than the surrounding areas because you got tons of development and concrete and what they call black bodies. They're just absorbing all this heat, solar radiation, and just stays hot. And that actually affects the weather. That literally affects, like you're saying, it affects the humidity in the air. Look at Qatar. Qatar, it barely ever rains there, but they get a ton of humidity because the Persian Gulf is so hot. It's like literally like 92-degree water temperatures. Imagine going to the ocean, it's 92 degrees. And so like you get all this water vapor in the air.
We talked about this last time. The Susquehanna in Pennsylvania just hit 85 degrees.
Yeah. Now, what else? Now me, Zeracor brought us up a long time ago, but what power source uses water besides hydroelectric? What energy source uses water and then loses efficiency once the cooling capacity of the water decreases?
I heard about this. It's nuclear.
Nuclear energy. Oh, so now our power sources, which not only took a ton of CO2 and not only have a ton of environmental potential issues, right, with like nuclear waste, well, now they're not as efficient. Oh man, it turns out it's all connected. Like the whole thing is connected. The whole world, the politics, the environment, everything is connected, and it's all bubbling. It's all bubbling up to the surface. You know, this is what's the only positive side.
What just flew across your ceiling? I swear I saw something fly across your ceiling.
There is a little gnat in here I've been trying to kill. But
yeah.
Did you see that too? Yeah, it looked like a piece of paper.
I thought it was on my screen, my mouse for a second. I'm not holding my mouse, so yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a net. I'm trying to get them, but it's too.
I hate when the buggers get in. They're
too
just
devious.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no. So we're getting exposed, and that's the ultimate story of the United States. When it comes to testing, just name me one thing the U.S. has handled well in the past 30 years besides the financial crisis. We're great at here, keeping the financial system going. That's it. We are super good at that. So specialized. We everything else is shit. I can't think of one good thing.
In 30 years?
Not in 30 years. And this is what I'm saying. Like, people say, "Oh, you're such a doomer." Look, this whole election right now, like with Trump and Biden, I've been around. My parents have been voting since who was it? Nixon and Humphrey. You know, my dad's 76. My mom's in her late 60s. They've been around. They've been here for the civil rights. They've seen all the changes. It's been, guess what, folks? It's been a nonstop march of neoliberal fucking decay for the past 50 years. And every choice is a false choice. We're just running out of time, and the electoral system is telling us that we're running out of time. Look at fucking Biden. The Democrats dropped the fossil fuel subsidies from the platform. Wow. Okay, great. So Trump is expanding the drilling capacity, the ability to drill in the Arctic, and Biden is dropping the banning of fossil fuel subsidies. Just great leadership. You know, I don't know.
We don't have to go down. Yeah, we don't have to go down that road. Yeah. And Zero, if you can either unmute or anything like that. I guess like maybe so there are two more things that I wanted to get to. CPL, I saw somebody had like a thing in their Twitter or something that there's a problem with Canada right now. Did the government like do a shutdown, or is something happening up that way? Did I read like a fake news or something?
Sorry, you said this was on my Twitter feed?
No, it was on somebody's Twitter feed.
Oh, well, there's always little things going on up here. Obviously, I mean, like, maybe what they're referring to is, I mean, we got rid of our finance minister recently. He had to go, and so now we're swapping in Chrystia Freeland, who some of you might know. She's sort of like the Trudeau #2. She's kind of like the second most popular individual. Yeah, I mean, he had a bit of corruption with the WE scandal as well. But I mean, that's been going on for a while. But it might have been the minister swap out would be my guess. But
what does the parliament being prorogued mean?
Prorogued or prolonged?
Prorogued? Is it like temporarily
I might not
suspended?
have caught up on it. I might not be caught up on it.
Okay.
It might be suspended. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sure they're bumping. I'm sure it's something like they're gonna bump it to September or something like that. Chad seems to know more about than I do right now. I haven't looked into it.
All right, and then so I wanted to go and maybe we'll finish up with like what you had found in your like Monopoly travels, Nate, or, you know, and I think that this is, I mean, we could probably
Before you hop into it, can I comment on that story from Bloomberg?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like dead on Monopoly. Yeah, I just peeked at this yesterday on stream. I just want to quickly mention. Yeah, it's when I read, you know, Fed now basically concerned about like monopoly power. It's nice to see the Fed do this, but I mean, unless like most people I know, unless you're living under a rock, this isn't a surprise that there's monopoly power that's out of control in the States. But at least the Fed is saying it themselves, so that's a good thing. But I'll let Nate.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree with CPL here, but basically the paper's called Market Power, Inequality, and Financial Instability. It just came out in July, at the end of July. And it's going to be a good paper when they quoted pretty thoroughly a paragraph from Michael Kalecki, who is sort of like a PKer, kind of a Keynesian kind of economist. But basically what we're talking about here is something that has been going on for a long time in the economy, which the free market types would love to deny or try to shift blame from, or say it's actually good. More monopoly is actually good. Less competition is actually good. It turns out it's not actually good. It turns out the Federal Reserve is publishing research and publishing data that does not support any of those claims. And if anything, we're actually getting just like exactly what you would think. Less of the share of the profit is going to guess who? The worker. The top 5% of households have tripled their wealth from 1983 to 2016. You've got all kinds of people having to, like we were saying before earlier in the chat, but this paper covers that, debt. People are now financing their lives on debt purely. This is what they survive on. They're surviving on the credit card. They're surviving on debt. There you go. And what does that do? That feeds the demand for more debt and debt instruments. And so then you build up these big speculative bubbles built on just debt, which might be fine in some cases and extraordinarily irresponsible in others, like in the 2008 financial crisis. So you basically have more and more intense stratification of wealth in the society. They're really pulling away into those Elysium type levels of wealth. Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg, all the tech people, Elon Musk, all of them. They're basically this is their system. You just live in it.
Mm-hmm. A little bit unrelated, but well, I'm just going to throw out another hard question. This is my favorite part about these evenings. As a lot of people are retiring, I think that we see that they are retiring at the moment right now. What would be the effect of people beginning to liquidate their 401ks en masse as like they need to become liquid to enjoy retirement? Like, is this something that should even be like discussed at all over the next like 5-year window, or am I like? Go ahead.
Well, I'll quickly just throw in, like, in terms of, that'll be someone else's income. Obviously, they're going to spend, you're older, so now's the time to spend that retirement, and that's going to go into the economy. Now, the question they need to be asking is, do we have the actual people around so that they can buy those services for, healthcare or whatever they need, right? So it kind of reminds me of Alan Greenspan when he was talking to Paul Ryan. It was in The Deficit Myth that we read, but he's like, he's talking about what really matters is like the real productive assets, mm-hmm. like the physical real world, right? It'll be someone else's income if they start cashing it in.
Well, I was just wondering, who is going to buy their equity positions? Like, Nate and I can't afford to.
True. Yeah. No. That's a good question.
That was kind of where I was trying to like take the question to. Like, let's say that you have 5 million accounts per year trying to liquidate their asset holdings or their equities holdings. Who are going to be the people that have enough money out there that can actually buy to prevent it from dragging the equities down? If that's making any kind of sense.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I don't actually have the data in front of me right now, but yes, will there be essentially, are those younger generations, younger than the boomers, are they making up for, are they putting into their 401ks at reasonably at replacement levels? Okay. Are they still putting demands for those sorts of assets, right? Will the flow of funds begin to dwindle in the near future and then therefore drag down, say, the value of equities with them because the demand for stocks or demand for ETFs are declining? That's a good question. I would assume that the younger people just have less than their parents did, and that therefore maybe their 401k portfolios are smaller or just getting started later even. So I once again, I would need more of that specific data. But yeah, there could be a problem if everyone starts cashing out of the market at the same exact time. However, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe there'll be some kind of crisis that could cause that to happen, but I'm not sure if there would actually be a run on this sort of liquidation.
Well, I just know that my dad is beginning to empty out his 401k. My aunt is doing a little bit of the same, and my dad is. Sorry, father. I think you're in your 60s. I don't know the exact number. You might be 60, and my aunt is 66. I'm not sure. But yeah, I was just trying to kind of like think, like when the baby boomers want to sell their homes and they either downsize or they move into like care facilities, who is going to be out there aside from, I mean, the answer is private equity mostly, but who is going to be out there to buy the homes that they want to sell?
Ideally, people with good credit rating. But as you can see, the debt levels, I don't know how good that's going to work out, but yeah.
It's a tough answer. I have to actually look at some of that data. All I know is though that in general, older people have more money because they've been working longer, and a lot of those boomers were inheriting. I guess that sort of they were inheriting a sort of economy that was working really well, relatively speaking, for a lot of people in the middle class in the United States, and that's essentially been wiped out.
Yeah.
With low-paying sort of service sector jobs. Or, I mean, put it this way, even if you're making like 6 figures in California, that can still be poverty because of the housing costs and food costs, right? You'd still be like lower middle class, still struggling even if you're making $90,000-$100,000 a year, which like
blows my mind. Just to take a second, like that blows my mind for someone to have like $100,000, and I'm like, you're struggling, what? Right?
Oh yeah, I think if you're in California, it's like if you're in like Los Angeles, I don't know if it's Los Angeles or San Francisco, but if you're a family of 4 making $100,000 a year, you're at the poverty line.
That's wild. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably paying. I mean, if you're a family, you're probably having to spend what, $2,500 a month on rent.
Probably at least, yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't really. It wouldn't. I remember watching that Jamie Dimon interview when there was a mother who was working at a teller in a bank, and she was living like an hour and 15 minutes away from her job, and she was spending $1,600 a month just on her rent to drive to be a cashier, because that was like the only. I mean, you got to think how bad LA is too. Have you ever been to LA, Canadian Populous Left?
No. I've only been to like Oregon, Washington, Idaho.
So Los Angeles is, what is it? It's like probably 10 miles wide and 20 miles tall, or something. Like it's like it's
a big city. It's a really big. I know that.
I think it is one of the biggest cities in not the most densely populated, but I think it has the largest footprint probably of any
footprint.
Yeah, and like I mean, there's just nowhere that you can afford to live. It's
all sprawl out there. I know a lot of great people, a lot of nice people from Los Angeles, but like the city itself is just a perfect case study of not enough planning. Literally just sprawl, build wherever, develop whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's then creates issues later on, which we're seeing.
So. To go back to what you were talking about with the monopoly, I heard a generous take. I don't agree with it, but I heard some people say that after the anti-monopoly hearings that took place, I think it was like a House committee. You remember these that happened with like the tech companies like pretty recently. They hoped that this was going to lay the groundwork for the next Congress and the next like set of representatives to actually begin to go in and do something about some of the tech monopolies and or some of the other monopolies that are taking point. Do you see any positive indicator or any good sign that there's actually going to be some type of trust busting taking place within the next, I would say, 2 years?
It's one of those things where it's like, I'll believe it when I see it, as much as the talk comes out about it. I mean, I would certainly hope so, in terms of a lot of concentration in the market. All I can say is I hope they actually go through it to some extent. It's so hard to say what will actually appear, but I would very much hope so. Whether or not they pull through with that, time will tell. But
yeah, you know what? But here's my sort of grim prognostications, just purely shooting from the hip. The Democratic Party is hopelessly enthralled by pharmaceutical companies and big tech companies. They're absolutely just a complete puppet at this point. Now, the conservatives, unfortunately, are also wrapped up in their it could be energy, other kinds of shady deals, and their absolutely insane ideology, which has their insane sort of quasi-fascistic supporters. But if anything, there'd be some kind of strange populism that might occur on the right, where you have something a little bit more economically left, with something way more like really cringe, like culturally speaking, it's come to power, and that would, if my guess would be that the trust busting element would be from the right at this point, and it wouldn't necessarily be like good. It wouldn't necessarily be good reasons why they're doing trust busting. It could be more sinister, old school scapegoating reasons of why they would be doing trust busting.
Yeah.
But I can't see the Democrats at all. I mean, they're totally it's like if someone had both their Achilles heels like torn. They can't even. I can't see them do it. They can't even resist the fossil fuel industry touring and the world's boiling.
I do. I want to push
sure.
back a little bit that it only would come from the right. Now, I mean, I have heard some of the people that are actually talking about it, and there is like a tiny little like fringe of it who thinks like you need to break up some of these. But I was going to say, like, I do think that there are wings of the progressive Democrats who are trying to get in and trying to get more power. Whether it's somebody like Bowman that's coming in, or AOC, or, Katie Porter, I would even say is like pretty good for like anti-monopoly work. So I have to hope that it's actually going to be the progressive wing that leads the charge forward, and it's not going to be kind of like the faux right under whatever nationalistic claims that they're going to make it.
Yeah, basically, I think the only way that could happen is if you had massive. First off, we need basically the entire service sector has to become like one big union at this point in the United States. That's the only way. You're not going to do it with trade unions alone. You're just not going to do it. Now AOC needs, or whoever, okay, like you're saying, maybe you're right. They are like AOC type people. There are like Bernie type people out there, but they need a huge, gigantic way. Like literally, Nancy Pelosi has to be terrified of showing her face in public because she's going to get shouted down and mocked and humiliated every single step of the way.
Sure.
In fact, basically the entire Democratic leadership, every political party, it should be like a open game basically on humiliating, making fun of, harassing all the political people in the United States, because that's it. There is no Teddy Roosevelt or whoever out there waiting in the wings.
Somebody,
go ahead.
Somebody brought up something in the channel, and I disagree with it, but it brings up a transition that I wanted to make. So Sourcing Support said, I predict an Amazon purchase of Walmart. And I think that so there was actually something that came out like 4 or 5 days ago. I think I linked it to you, Nate, but I might not have. Did you see that Amazon is trying to buy JCPenney's and Sears?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't think that Amazon is necessarily going to go directly after Walmart, even though Walmart has an incredible distribution network across the entire country. It appears to me that they are trying to go and do what I want the municipal sector to do for hotels. They're waiting for a few businesses and a few places of real estate to collapse, and then they want to go in and they want to buy them for a couple pennies on the dollar. And then Amazon wants to take all of the old JCPenney stores, all the old Sears stores, and turn them into distribution centers. Because, I mean, drive across Pennsylvania, Nate. How many dying archaic malls are there, all strewn across our state?
They're everywhere.
So I don't exactly see them trying to pick. And I mean, okay, maybe I'm underestimating like the amount of like insane bold. Like I don't even think the U.S. would let them. But like I don't think that we enforce any monopoly law. But I think they might even say like, okay, Amazon, you can't buy Walmart.
Yeah, it depends on how much shame you think they have. I don't know. I don't know how shameless the U.S. like political establishment is, or like what kind of thing. But no, it's possible. This is the thing. Like this is the radical situation of our time. It's entirely possible. They just don't stop anything.
Mm-hmm.
Did you donate to my campaign? Okay, that sounds good. Go ahead, merge her on up, right?
Well, and did you see what Walmart is doing with drive-in movie theaters?
No, what are they doing?
Yeah, they're building drive-in theaters in their parking lots. Because they have all this space and it's not being used all the time,
totally.
And there's nowhere for people to go see movies. So like you have such cross monopolization and like condensing of these different sectors in our country, and it all just like it's not even happening slowly over time anymore. It's just like domino here and domino there, and it just.
Yeah, well, the economic arguments against monopoly. I mean, you can see like in this paper, they're saying they're terrible. It's all about reducing competition. It's bad for the consumer. But guess what? The predominant economic ideology that was ruling in Washington in the 80s and 90s was that, well, wait a minute, not all monopolies are bad. I mean, sometimes they give advantages to the consumer. Sometimes there's more efficiency. Look, everyone goes to Amazon. No one's even trying to look for a competitor when they Google what to order something from. There are people who are going to constantly make the argument that like well, that's just the natural way things are. And if Amazon was doing a bad job, there would be another company there. Like there's literally like this kind of belief system in the U.S. especially.
I was listening to Andrew Yang, and he said it's really hard to talk about why Amazon does need to be broken up, because the way the consumer sees it is, at the moment, the consumer kind of benefits from them able to subsidize their shipping, and they're underbidding everybody, and they're just, I mean, one of my big long-term complaints about Amazon is all of the money that they make because of their Amazon Web Services business, they just use to undercut every single other thing that they do. And now that they have the Amazon Basics marketplace, they can make their goods and not pay the 30% premium that they charge the small business. So like,
and they're getting those Defense Department contracts too. That's what they're going for. They're
Defense Department too. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They're Amazon wants to be like I'm sure one day they could even buy Microsoft or take them over or have some kind of crazy merger. Who knows? This is saying we're in this we're headed towards the Blade Runner sort of future where this giant mega corporations and there's
I was waiting for somebody to not let them buy Whole Foods. And that kind of just like came and go without like even like a whimper. And then we had United Technologies and Raytheon, who Trump even actually came out and said, like, hang on a minute, maybe we can't let all of the weapons be produced by one company. Maybe this is a bad idea. And they didn't even stop that one. They didn't stop Sikorsky and Lockheed. So we have Lockheed, Boeing, and the Raytheon UTX, which pretty much makes anything that flies or explodes.
Yep. I mean, it's gonna be tough to see like when finally, because I mean in my living memory, maybe Chat might be able to correct me on this, but like my memories where my brain goes with like the last time there was like a big scandal about monopoly was like Bill Gates and Microsoft back in like the 90s, and I remember like the cameras rolling when I was younger, and like Bill Gates has to come in and like defend his case, and like I don't see Jeff Bezos having to come in front of politicians and start explaining why his business is like legit. Like that's kind of the level that you need to be at, in my opinion, when we're going to start taking this seriously, is when I see Jeff Bezos having to come in for like these long hearings to explain to Congress. Will they grill him about like monopolization?
Yeah, they give him 5 minutes apiece in like a 4-person setting. Like, no, you should give each person that wants to ask him questions like 15 minutes and make them sit there over 3 days and just
for days on. Yeah, it's going to be on. I mean, because remember like Bill Gates, it was like cameras rolling. It was always, and it went on and on and on and on. It wasn't just like this quick like, hey, I got a quick question. You Monopoly? No. Okay, case closed. Right. It was a long, big deal. So.
Yeah. It's once again, it really does boil down to a political sort of situation. Where who would be fighting against the monopolization? Someone had to be looking out for who? The American people, and when have they done that? So it'd be like, I don't know. Maybe we could assume that there is still some kind of, maybe the Democrats might stop it, or maybe they would ask some questions. But I mean, Trump got all the funding he wanted to for all the things that he wanted. I mean, he was doing whatever he wanted. There was no resistance. I'm assuming that there would be much resistance to people like Bezos or Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, considering that they probably are significant donors up and down every ticket everywhere. Probably just replicating the Koch brothers strategy, but for the Democratic Party side of things. Yeah, I mean, maybe it does make sense for Amazon to buy those brick and mortars. I don't really know, though. I mean, not Amazon, Walmart. It was Amazon.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense for Amazon, but we don't want them to. I mean, like for them, it makes perfect business sense. They're gonna say, hey, look, we're revitalizing your economies. We're bringing in a warehouse. We're gonna need drivers. We're going to be able to get the goods to you quicker and everything. But what is that going to do to like all of the other stores? It's going to run them out of business. And then what's Amazon going to do after that? Well, when they go out of business, then they're going to buy up another chain, which would maybe be Walmart. And then they're going to reopen it as Amazon. So then you'll have the distribution center. You'll have the actual retail chain. You'll have the basic marketplace. They'll build the factory to build the goods behind it. Like it's
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like that, getting their biggest costs, the most problematic aspect of shipping things to you is that last 100 miles.
mm-hmm.
So, getting something from Hong Kong to the port of Los Angeles is relatively straightforward, right? You hire a tanker, it goes,
Yep.
across the Pacific, and after 23 days or something, it gets here. But getting it to the through all those networks of distribution, and then finally to where the last stages, you actually have to hire that person who comes out there in the little Amazon, the subcontractor van or something with the little jacket, or that little like that was it the day glow thing, and they come out there and they put the little package on your stuff. That's like the most costly part. So anything they can do to try to drive all that down and start, I mean, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to like drive up their margins by reducing their costs somewhere along the line. You can cut people out of that, and then ultimately monopolize it. Because I can't wait for the day, like you're saying, Touring. They buy everything, they own everything, and guess what? Oh, no more free shipping. Oh no!
Right? Oh
Yeah.
no! Shipping. No.
They conquered it all in that free shipping. That free shipping, everyone thinks they're saving money. That's how they won. They conquered it. I mean, maybe they have some good algorithms and whatever, but like that free shipping thing, that got Americans hook, line, and sinker. You could sell if only Bernie Sanders could have sold Medicare for all like free shipping. Maybe we wouldn't be in this problem
Right?
with our health industry. It's just like that is the key, man. People in this country, they love a good deal. I was saying before, it's a mentality problem in the United States. How could it be that we've gotten to the point from in history where everyone knew where monopolies were bad, where we already had a partial revolt against the robber barons, like the J.P. Morgans and the the Rockefellers. We already had this rebellion before. How could it now be reversed?
Well, I mean, they funded the institutions that wrote the economic textbooks with the money that they made when they got broken up. Is kind of the way that I like have read that it actually did happen. Is like when
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah, like-
absolutely. If I can interject on it, like this is the whole thing, because like academia was very, very difficult for like placement. So what they did is it's a lot of like think tanks now, because they can make their own like little think tank. They don't have to worry about like pushback or anything. And then a lot of these think tanks just straight up write the legislation and like, oh, Mitch McConnell, here you go. Yeah, thanks, bud. All right, peace. And that's they just wipe
which
their hands and go home.
which one of the robber barons invested in Chicago, in the University of Chicago? Was it Rockefeller or Carnegie? I don't remember.
I want to guess Carnegie. I don't know.
Yeah,
offhand.
But yeah,
I don't know
didn't they take like hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars and just kind of like mass seed a lot of the universities across the country?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
In
Yep,
addition to
Carnegie did that.
rewriting the middle school and
Oh yeah, they were totally obsessed by their image too. Carnegie, in essence, left most of his fortune, if not all of it. I don't think he left much to his kids, but he was putting all that seed money down for libraries all across America. You go to like little towns in the middle of Nebraska, and you'll see like this ornate stone library, and it's a Carnegie library. You can still see them all over the place. And it was about like cleaning up your image. Oh look, this is such a generous, benevolent billionaire as who was it, Dale Carnegie or whatever. Or Andrew Carnegie. It's like I can't believe that they are now letting the working man learn so that they can also become capitalists too. Like that was literally that whole like sort of conscious laundering back then. Nowadays we do it through was it the Bill Gates the pledge to give or I'm gonna give it all when I'm dead. I'll give some of it away and I'm gonna give $500 million. It seems like so much. I'm gonna give $500 million to charity even though you're worth like 116 billion. It's like, and you're getting a tax,
right.
yeah,
Well,
you're getting like a tax write-off. Oh, isn't that so nice? No one else gave. How much did you give, Touring? $50. Bill Gates gave $500 million. It's like okay.
Got him.
when
Got him.
when did Bezos get divorced? So I know that his wealth has gone up a ton, but didn't he actually just lose 50 billion and he's still up like 70?
Yeah.
He
I
did-
don't-
he lost 50, but he's still up like 70 in 18 months. So he would be up he'd be up 120 billion or in like 18 months time. Like it's
Yeah, he's probably made it back already. Well,
he did.
Like
Yeah.
exactly. Like no big deal. Like whatever for him at least.
I think this is bringing us up to the soft close of the 4th episode of the Political Economy Podcast. It's starting to get close to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're coming up on like the 2-hour run that we were doing. Do we want to do like a little bit of like final thoughts and then we'll do like a closing of who we are, thank people for coming in and so forth. So if anybody, if you've got something you want to chime in with, we still have like 5 or 10 minutes if it takes a little while.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I wanted to, I guess I'll speak on the things that I forgot about that I was going to talk about during the convo real fast and just throw those out there. I mean, the last thing when we're talking about environmental stuff there for a minute, it was really unfortunate to see now that the Greenland ice sheet, is past the point of no return. It's GG, no re. It's
Wait, but
I don't know,
didn't you see the good news that there's plastic in every different species that they bring up out of the ocean? Come on, like
that's what
they're getting
there you
fed.
go.
They're getting fed.
They're getting fed the plastic.
I actually saw
Yeah,
that it was 1 grain of rice of microplastic was in every serving of sardines. I think it was the most highly concentrated plastic that they found. So you eat a grain of rice for every serving of sardines. Sorry to interrupt your
That's
iceberg
no,
flow.
just because I didn't talk enough about the environment too, and that's on my mind. Like, obviously, we're all talking about here, like the Federal Reserve this, Treasury that, finance sector this, blah 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 blah. But the end of the day, all this stuff, the entire economy, the society, the world, the underpinning thing is the ecology, right? When that collapses, it's somewhere you just don't want to be, and that's a polite way to put it. It's just the politest way to put it. Is you don't want to be there, right? And it's just sad to see.
How do we?
Stuff going the way it is.
I actually kind of like didn't go too much into it during this one because like I don't want to terrify people. But how?
Yeah.
So,
No, I
but
know.
but this is like an important question. How do we continue to bring it up and continue to get like the message out there? I mean, maybe we won't have a black background when we do it next time. We'll put like a rainbow up there or something. But like, yeah, how do you prevent it from being insert whatever word.
Well, I guess like whenever you're discussing and like always just like at the end, just I think that's the important thing to always tail up and in the end is like whatever we're talking about remind like at the end of the day, like for me the economy it is I view it like an organism, like it is biological, it's filled with like living people and other creatures, species, bacteria, blah blah blah. It's all linked, like Nate was saying earlier, it's all linked in together, right? It's all linked. We're talking about the water. And at the end of the day, it's all rooted in the ecology, and like there's only so much you can do. Like I get it, yeah, you gotta get materials, you build things, you do things with the earth, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there are limits, right? And you need to, not that I know exactly what those are, but I do understand that we're
testing
much
them.
over. We're much more. We're running the real deficit we should be worrying about. That to what Zero Core was kind of talking about, I think last time is, the environmental deficit, right? That's not unlimited, right? That has a limit. That's the kind of stuff we have to worry about. The climate deficit, healthcare deficit, this kind of stuff. So, but no one talks about those things as if they're deficits. Oh my God, federal deficit, we're going bankrupt. We have to worry about this. It's like, okay, there's other stuff.
It was interesting how Stephanie wrote that in her book about trying to bring awareness to what the other deficits are.
Yeah, right. I forgot she mentions that in the book too. Yeah,
I think it was I think it was chapter 7.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And really good awareness of bringing it. It's a healthcare deficit. It's an ecology deficit. It's a housing deficit. Like these are
housing deficit. Thank you. Yeah, totally.
I think CPL basically hit the head on the nail. The only narrative we can really afford to push is that we need to spend on the things that we need. And that's going to require an effort to destroy austerity thinking and austerity arguments. Unfortunately, like you were saying, touring with like the planet things, it's just not any. There's just no good news. The epitaph on our grave as a species is going to be that we destroyed, not only destroy our own home, but we destroyed a planet that we didn't even understand. We never even really understood the oceans or explored them all, or really, we never really understood every single ecosystem or the rainforest. But we're going to kill them. And we can go to the deepest depths of the earth and we can find somehow life is underneath like 200-300 atmospheres of pressure in complete darkness in really cold water. Somehow there's life down there, and there's also plastic bags. And that is the ultimate epitaph. So the only thing you can do for the people listening here is you try to enjoy literally what's around you. Maybe appreciate that little animal, that's some kind of bird in your yard or something like that.
Maybe don't kill that gnat that's flying around your house.
keep the pollinators
Let 'em
alive,
out,
even
let
if
'em
they're
out.
annoying. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do try to. I try my best to be a not 100% Janist, but I'm not sweeping everything in front of me, but I do try to let all the animals out. But yeah, like all you can really do, it kind of goes back to those Stoic philosophers from way back. Like, you can't help the fact that Nancy Pelosi is an asshole. Like, there's nothing you can actually just do about it yourself. You might be a voter in Virginia right now. So you have to focus on your exact location, and you have to put one step in front of the other, and you have to figure out what could you realistically do, and what could you just realistically just throw up your hands. Like, ultimately, what we're gonna do about climate change is throw up our hands, right? We've proven to be a species that does not want to do global cooperation or hasn't managed to achieve it yet. And it seems like people in our species tend to do things after the crisis. We tend to get involved in World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor. I mean, we're doing some Lend Leasing and all that, but we tend to respond rather than prevent, right? And so, unfortunately, unless that paradigm changes, all you can do as an individual person is just your best while still trying to maintain your own health and your own sanity, and try to maintain some curiosity in the world. Try to keep some light in the world for yourself. That's the best. That's literally the best you can do.
I think I'll go a little bit, well, not much more optimistic, but a little slightly more optimistic that like the hope that I have is that let's just say if the Democrats control the presidency rather than the Republicans control the presidency, that rather than people being as caught up in protesting tweets and protesting, like statements and so forth, we're going to be able to return to doing like climate and ecological protests. And then hopefully by somehow going that route, and if were playing video games and like you got in the way of certain things like shipping from one place to another or so forth, like, maybe there's like some progress that can be made here. Because I can't, I'm not really thinking of the toss the hands up, and that like the species hasn't really shown, because I mean, I pretty much do agree with you that we usually only come together after the crisis. But then like even with your analogy of like the World War II part, like now that I'm like looking and going through it more, like we were doing a lot of sanctions to Japan even before the attack, so we were already in the war in like a way, but like, and so forth. But yeah, I kind of just have to hope that with an administration change, there will be a renewed vigor of, like the protests aren't going to be against the authoritarianism and fascism of Trump. They're going to be against the horrible green energy policies of the next administration. And this is kind of what gives me like a little bit of hope, and maybe like to try to, end it on something a little brighter. But
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta try to end it on. Don't want to completely doom out, but go about take care. Obviously, whatever's immediate in your life, and you got to figure out whatever is local to you. Is Nate said Nancy Pelosi, she's doing her own. She's in La La Land. She's gonna do her own Nancy Pelosi thing, and
Yeah.
you just gotta try to enjoy the small moments of enjoyableness here and there, and trug through the rest.
this is bringing us to the end of the fourth episode of the Political Economy Podcast. I was one of the hosts tonight, twitch.tv/touring news. You can check me out there on the channel kind of pretty frequently. The person up to this side of me is twitch.tv/Canadian Popules Left. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. He grabs a book off one of those shelves, brings them down, does a little bit of a news review first, does a little bit of a review of an interview with an author from YouTube, and then like a 5 to 10 minute passage reading afterwards. And then on this side, we have SBTV_. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time until the sun comes up, or 1 Eastern until the sun comes up. Usually talking in the dark room about some of these things. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about yourselves?
No, I'd say that's about it. Thank you. That's a good rundown.
Yeah, I think we had a pretty fun conversation today, and I look forward to more in the future. If you guys like what I was talking about, like Torian said, you can come by and check out the channel, and get into as many different topics as possible. And I'm not always doomer, just like 96% of the time. something like that. But it's just that's all. So thanks for having me, Tori.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
thanks
we
for having me on, Touring. I appreciate it, and good to be here with Nate too.
well,
It's
yeah, I
awesome
mean,
to see
thank
you.
you